let's wait for a second for it to kick into everywhere, because I don't know how long it takes.
I don't either.
As of restream, I think it takes a couple minutes, or not a couple minutes, but at least 30 seconds. 30 seconds is the new couple minutes. All right, let's just do it. That's what I say. Hi, everybody. My name's Indy, and I'm sitting here with Mr. Jay Powell. And in the middle, we have Ericka from Phantom Compass. What are we talking about today, Jay?
We're going to talk about running a distributed office, which is something that I've done for 10 years, but I run a consulting firm. It's a lot easier than when you're running a development company. But Ericka has been doing this for a very long time, and they are a development company, so it gives it a little more authority there. So welcome to Indie Game Business, Ericka.
Hello, thank you.
So we always like to start off with the wonderful question of, how did you actually get into the industry, and walk us through your career?
Okay. I actually started in television. I was a children's television producer working with puppets for an educational broadcaster here where I live. I'm in Ontario, Canada. And so that is not the normal path, I think, to get into video games.
There is no normal path.
Can you talk about what the show was? What was the show?
It was called Giselle's Big Backyard.
I think I've heard of that before.
It actually I think there are some segments that used to go on PBS in the States. So so I worked there for several years, and it was a lot of fun. And I thought, hey, why not just throw away everything that I know about my career and try something new? Yeah. So I started working in games, actually back about 12 years ago now. And it coincided with me becoming a mom too at the same time. So it was kind of a crazy time. But I worked at Silicon Knights for a few years in between maternity leaves and joined Phantom Compass about 8.5, 9 years ago now. And I've been head of production at Phantom Compass for ever since, I guess. Yeah.
It's funny because we actually just had one of your neighbors join the Discord server.
Oh, one of my neighbors.
Pixel Knots.
Pixel Knots, yes.
I was like, wow, that's weird. They're from Niagara Falls, and we just have Ericka on right now. So, okay, good.
Yeah.
Which, it's a good segue.
Nice.
If you do want to join, us, the conversation, all of our guests are typically on our Discord server in one way, shape, or form. It's discord.gg/indie game business. Really simple to remember, and join us because we have all kinds of, interesting conversations on the show. So let's start with the basics. Is there anything that's considered a distributed office other than having people all over the place? I mean, is it typically, in your experience anyway, do you have like a core group that's in a real office and then contractors, or is it more along the lines of everybody's distributed and, we're going to make it work that way?
Well, at Phantom Compass, we've been kind of all configurations. So we've been fully distributed, like everybody, and that's where the way we're at right now. We've had an office with workers actually in Niagara, and the rest of the team distributed, and even then, we would work with contractors as well. But I think it's for our experience, it's been like, there's definitely, I came from a very structured environment, like when I was in television, it was you go into work 9 o'clock, you clock out when you're done. The same when I was at the other indie developer. Everybody would just go in, put in their hours, and then leave. And so I was freelancing for a short period of time in between working my maternity leave and starting my job at Phantom Compass. And my boss man Tony, I'd known him for years just as a friend, and he's like, "Hey, Ericka, you're not why don't you just come work for us? And I'm like, well, you're in Toronto and I'm in St. Catharines, and how is that going to work? I can't, like, and he's like, no, we're distributed. And I was like, mind blown. I was like, you mean
no,
I can?
We don't want to pay for rent. Yeah. So we're distributed. That's the.
But it really, I mean, it's been interesting. Like, you know, I'm a bit older, the team's a bit older, we're parents, you know, I think, and that really like opened, like, I mean, it's not like a new thing anymore. People know about you know, working from home, and I know a lot of people have options to, like, you know, work from home a few days, but really it was something that was new to me. I never really considered, and it really made me working possible at that time when I had young children. So yeah, no, it's been cool.
So, I mean, aside from the obvious pro of you don't have to pay overhead, you know,
yeah.
What are some of the better reasons? I mean, what are some of the reasons that you should look to do this and you should start, you know, you should work with that distributed office?
Right. Well, I mean, I've talked about this in the past with, you know, I've talked with student groups, looking at people who are wanting to become entrepreneurs, and just looking at it as a different way to work when you're starting a company. Because I think, especially for people who are starting out, there are a lot of pros, and it's just coming. I mean, your mileage may vary depending on the type of work you do, and the you know, pipelines that you have for your team. But for our company, the pros just vastly outweigh the cons. You know, I mean, the quality of life, I think, for workers is probably the biggest one. So for people in your team, there's just a lot of flexibility, other than, you know, financial. You know, I also think that, like, communication can actually be improved when you're working remotely, which is a little bit ironic, but you know, I could talk about that. You know, and then there's just, it's a little bit different with, you know, there are definitely some drawbacks though, like with team building and, you know, having physical distance between members. But, you know, you can turn all of those things into pros if you're willing to put in the effort.
All right, so I mean, but that's a great place to start. It's like, what, you know, what tools do you need? How do you do it? I mean, how do you keep people focused? But all right, so I'm having like a multitude of questions. Let's start small. What tools and systems do you all use to keep everybody on the same page and keep workflow, you know, going well versus going completely off the rails?
Yeah. Well, I think the core one for us is just having, you know, like a chat space. You know, we've used, you know, in the beginning, we used to use Skype as a place where our team would basically gather. That was our office. We now use primarily Slack, and have been, you know, kind of moving to Discord. More so in the last little bit, you know. So I think that's probably core, is just having an online communication tool, and then everything else is pretty much everything that people use. You know, in a studio environment, you know, you still have your, you know, whatever source control you're going to be using, whether you're going to be, if it's like an online, or if you're going to be FTPing into a server or whatever. I think everything else is pretty much common. I think the biggest thing that people might not think about is like having a really good quality headset, because we're constantly, like, literally talking into each other's heads like all day. And if it's like there's bad, like, background noise, or, you know, whatever, you know, people, you can hear people typing, it's like pretty darn annoying pretty quick. But, you know, I think we kind of have a pipeline that we've developed in our team, just around communication in general, where emails are really just for, like, communicating outwardly to clients, or things that are like permanent. Like, I'm going to be like, I'm a producer, so I do a bunch of really, like, HR type things, like, or whatever, like, so official news goes into email, things that people want to reference. But everything else, daily communication, just goes into, you know, either a general chat, or we break down our different chats into projects that we're working on, because we often work on multiple projects at the same time. So, and always, I think always having a culture or humor or off topic is good for work too, because you gotta have an outlet, right? And our team is funny, I think. So it's good. It's good to be able to have a place to focus that isn't in the main chat, so that when you need a brain break, you can go scroll through whatever stupid memes people found during the day.
So, I mean, how do you make sure people are actually working? Because that's always one of the questions that comes up.
Yeah.
When everybody starts doing this, is like, how do you know? Or does it even matter if somebody's putting in 8 hours a day or however many hours a day? How do you track and how do you keep people focused and know that everything's getting done like it's supposed to be?
It's a bit, it isn't, I have to say, it isn't for everyone. We've had some bad experiences where people weren't, being honest. And I'm like, they were just a bad hire. Right. And they weren't showing up, particularly like, when we've had in like students who are like doing co-ops or internships with us. I would typically want them in a building, in an office space with us, because it's hard when somebody is just learning like really how to work within an office to and what is expected, to kind of pick up on all the signals, and some people do it naturally and some people don't. One of the things that we do when, as part of our onboarding, is we'll have open air office times where if all the people on the same project, particularly with like developers or designers working as a team, they'll just have an open chat, and then some people will just say like taking off, they'll type in taking off headphones, and if they want to, or AFK, if they're going to bow out a little bit. But you really do need to kind of, in the first few months, kind of keep on top of people and make sure that they're understanding what is expected of them. We have we do type into the chat pretty much a stream of consciousness, like AFK. We use BRB. If you're going to be away for like more than 5 minutes, but otherwise we expect people like to be at their desk and able to answer a call within 5 minutes. But we try to respect people's time, particularly if somebody's like in the middle of a task that we don't want to distract them all the time. So we don't ninja call people, as I call it. Like we don't just like bring them up whenever we want to, we give them some time and flex there.
But isn't that weird? I mean, because you've been doing this for a while, like me. I mean, when I started, just to date myself, it's like we literally had to send contracts back and forth by fax machine. And
yeah,
it was always that whole, if you needed somebody, you picked up the phone and called them. That's it. And now it's you do that, you're just asking to get cussed out, most likely.
You have to message people and say, I'm going to call you right now.
Yeah, I do that all the time. I'm like, I'm gonna but it's like a weird, because messaging is so instant and everything's so instant now. Like it's like it's like a new etiquette, right? Like not to call people.
Yeah, like just Jay was talking about, I don't answer the phone if I don't know the number. I will answer every call. I don't care.
But yeah, I think as just like in summary, with it really isn't for everybody. Working remotely isn't for everybody. Some people really need the structure, and I think like there are, and the physical, whatever that is, to keep them motivated, but for me, like I love the fact that I can, it's like take 5 minute bathroom break and then throw some laundry in and come back to my desk, right? Like it's not a big deal. Like there's some nice perks, and there does have to be a lot of trust with the team too. Like
it takes a lot of self-control too.
It does. It helps. I think with, that's one of the, like with having a physical space if you have like, I'm lucky enough, I have a house. So we have a room.
That's good.
that is an office. It is a house that, people living in smaller apartments and things like that, where or condos, like where their work life space doesn't have much separation, right? Like if you're just like going to the end of your bed to where your laptop is set up, it is that is a bit. It can be not very good for your basically mental health, because you're always at work, right? When you're working from home, you really have to create routines that basically artificially mimic going to work routine, right? So it's like you're going to set up, you're like, okay, so every morning I'm not going to turn my computer on until I've gotten dressed, brushed my teeth, whatever.
You wear pants? That's one of the perks of having a home office, is that you don't have to wear pants. I mean, you
don't have to, but I do think it helps. It helps just kind of create like a better mental hygiene. Like it just protects yourself.
Right. My problem is that
getting into work mode. So then you can also turn it off, right? Like it's like I'm bad. I'm so bad. Everybody's bad. Like it's like I could do my work from my phone 90% of the time, So like if I'm just working on spreadsheets or whatever, so it's awful. Like I literally am carrying my office in my pocket.
Right. My problem is that my office is right across the hall from my bedroom. So instead of like having a morning routine, my morning routine is getting up and walking across, sitting down and looking at messages. So we have a question from chat from Nightwolf. And thanks, Mr. Adam, for calling me sexy. And I'm not going to be playing Fortnite, but yes, thank you so much. It must be the beard or something. I don't know. So here we go. Nightwolf says from Mixer, how much leeway do you give them? Talking about what you were talking about, people that you work with. Is it by experience strictness or by issues that come up that determine it? Since, it is long distance over internet, so anything can be made up that could make it a bit fishy. He's talking about the knowing if somebody's working or not.
Knowing if somebody's working or not. I think, like in my experience, it doesn't take too long to kind of suss things out. I mean, if you have it depends on your team structure too. Like we have core hours, which I do recommend if you can do it. It depends on if you're working with people around the world, but even if those people have core hours, even if it's a small window, like where a 2-hour overlap or something, so that you can know when check-ins of their work would normally be coming in. I think that's for the first, as I said, within the first 3 months, if you're getting regular check-ins, and it's expected that people are checking in their work, daily or better, that there shouldn't be anything. I mean, nobody should be keeping work on a local machine without checking it in.
You say that, but that happens all the time. That's
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. You do have to make sure these things are happening regularly and making that your policy. Like if you're an employee here, this is what is expected. When you start your day, you check in on Slack or whatever it is, or Discord. You put in a stand-up report, what you're working on that day. We do have voice meetings. Like we have a regular voice meeting. It's 10 minutes in the morning, where we're because our team is all in the same time zone. It's easy. And I think one of the there are going to be red flags. And if you feel like if you're starting this up with people that you don't have an established, trust relationship with, I definitely would put in, it's something that we don't do, but it's something we've thought about, is like, do we have, just open chat the whole time, where you have a video camera on their computer, you can see that they're bums in a seat. I find that that's a bit too invasive. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. Some companies do have that. So it's up to you and what you feel comfortable with, I think, as an employer, or as a team member.
There's that one company that I don't know what it is. It's for Or working remotely, where it takes a screenshot every 30 seconds of the screen or whatever that is.
Are you serious?
Yeah. What is it called?
We built a tool just for fun to see if that would, we were like, yeah, who's gonna ultimately we want to be working with people that we trust, and as long as people are getting their work done and producing, it's something that maybe like we did burn about 3 months worth of work on a team member once who screwed us over, but live and learn, and we have a lot. We just put in just basic checks and balances. Just checking their work every once in a while. It's harder when that person was a senior member and.
Yeah, it's called Upwork.
It's supposed to be independent.
Upwork. That's the one that did it.
Yeah.
I've used that before, but yeah.
Yeah. I think one of some of the things that you don't. One of the drawbacks I think is with team building that would build that trust level with your workers. Not everybody's works at the same pace or the same level or works optimally, right? You have to give for, some people are morning people, some people work better at night, whatever. It depends on how much flexibility you want to give them, but just you still need to make sure you're having FaceTime at some time, whether that's everybody driving to the same location or flying in or whatever it is. To have some sort of team building, that's brilliant, that's the best, and it's not like work stuff. It's like, okay, we're going to go out and do paintball, we're going to be social, we're just going to go to a bar, we're going to whatever, just have some social time for people to be themselves. That's ideal if you can do it, and if not, do game together. It's like learn a little bit about each other as individuals rather than always just having a work relationship. I think really does help. That's my preferred style to manage, is to know people as people rather than
it's super easy to just because I've been working remotely for 8 years, to just kind of feel like I'm sitting here in my own little hole all by myself, and then you kind of get settled into a thing, and then sometimes you just need that extra kick in the butt to just okay, we got to get my energy back, got to get my I
have to get up and go outside.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even just if our team, we're spread out. I think the furthest of us is currently about 3 hours apart. If we had to drive
that's not bad at all.
It's not bad, right? So it's we do get together. We try to get together at least once a year, if not more, as a team, and do something. We usually have okay, this is it's going to be brainstorm meetings and whatever, and then okay, now we're going to do something fun. So we haven't done that in a year, so I guess we're due.
It's time. Right.
Yeah, time. What about the flip side of that? There's so much talk now of quality of life with developers, and especially the bigger developers.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you don't have somebody that's pulling an 18-hour day?
Yeah, that is a huge problem. Huge problem. And, there are going to be, we're all guilty of it because we love our jobs, right? Even though I don't want to have to work, 80 hours a week, there are times when you kind of want to, because you're coming up to a deadline, and yeah, you're into it, and you're like, oh, if I just put a couple more hours in, or if this, I could just make this better, blah, blah, blah. And I think that is one thing that you really, we've had to be strict over. I called it weekender scope creep. Because people would, in their after hours, or on the weekends, they'd be like, oh, I'm going to relax by doing a little bit of work that I consider fun, rather than doing the work that has to get done. So
I know that feeling. Yeah.
And it all comes from a really good spot, right? And it's hard to say no to that, but we have to say no, because what would happen is, Monday morning, I go and check the build, and I'm like, oh, when did we get whatever it was feature?
We have multiplayer. That's
we have online multiplayer all of a sudden.
Yeah. Like I think one of the ones I can remember actually on our game we put out was, I think we ended up with dust trails on Rollers of the Realm, which we work with Jay on, and it was one of the things, and it was something that was like on the nice to have list. I might be getting the games mixed up, but I remember when it went in over a weekend, and we spent like a week trying to figure out what the perf problem was, that we suddenly we were getting like all these like stuff was tanking and whatever, and then it was just like a badly implemented particle that was things. So it was something that didn't have to go in. It went in kind of under the radar. People were like, oh, that looks cool, but it caused so many problems along the way. It distracted us from main production. So yeah, it's something, we say, like, if you want to do work on we have side projects that people work on, and
don't mess with our money maker.
Yeah. So have an active side project that when you need a brain break, or when you have downtime, you're working on that, not on the current active project. With
that sounds like giving somebody busy work is what it is. Okay, take this toothbrush and go over here and scrub this thing that totally doesn't need to be cleaned, but it's going to take you a long time and it will be good for you.
But I mean, that's not, in many cases, it could be called busy work, but that's not always a bad thing.
No.
That's one of the things that I learned, when I was in high school and working. I worked in the Walmart pharmacy. I sold drugs at Walmart.
Not out the back door either, huh?
No, I sold them right up front. I mean, they would just come in and get them. The woman who was managing it, taught me at the time, there's always something you can be doing.
Got time to lean, you got time to clean, that kind of thing?
Yeah. It's like, even so on our side, there's always like updates that can be done to the database, and, checking in to see, if this publisher is still doing console games. I mean, there's always something you can be doing. Yeah. It may not be exactly what that project details or what's on your task list for the day, but, there's a way to have side projects going on that don't necessarily feel like busy work.
Well, yeah, and I think the main thing is that it should be like, sometimes like what you're working on is mind numbing, right? Like if you're working on a big feature, or you just need a brain break, or if like I'm staring at numbers like on a spreadsheet for like hours or whatever, you just like literally need a brain break. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take 15 minutes. I'm going to do something else. So rather than the do something else be a new feature that is on a nice to have list, you're doing something more productive that isn't going to potentially cause problems, because it's always like everybody's got the best of intentions, but it can now suddenly we're like, oh, that was a cool feature, that was a great idea, but we didn't think through, okay, now we have to QA it, and now we have to make proper UI for it and support it with art, and now talk about it as if, what I mean? It's just everything gets bigger and bigger. Yeah, the end.
All right, so let's talk about the bad side.
The dark side.
You don't have unless your office actually has an office, and some people are working remotely, you don't always have a real office and a real office address, which causes issues with banks and insurance, and even I think, Nintendo's better about it now, but during before the Switch, basically during everything, if you didn't have a legitimate office with a door that locked, and that's what it said in the dev kit, you couldn't get a dev kit.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other, aside from productivity issues, but what are some of the other kind of unknown, unexpected, oh, wait, maybe we need a real office type things that you all come across and that you've seen?
Yeah, I think, one of the ones, early on was getting a phone number that was not just, individual people's cells. Like, I mean, it's so easy now, but it was just such a silly thing that we, that was something early on. We're like, oh, well, why don't we just get like, a phone number that just redirects I'm still picking it up on my cell phone, but it's not, oh, call Ericka's cell. It's, speaking of which.
It's time for your meeting.
But yeah, I think with us, we've, as I said, we had offices and now we don't have offices. Having a meeting space for when you need it is really important. I think co-working spots, almost every small community seems like they have them now, which is so wonderful. If there's a boardroom you can rent, or if you have people in the same town that want to, if it's, you want them to work together, you can rent space, monthly, weekly, daily, sometimes. That can really help. I've had a ton of client meetings in, Tim Hortons in Canada.
Of course it wasn't a Tim Hortons.
But Starbucks, or in a lobby of a hotel, those kinds of things is like kind of, a comfortable common area. But when we did have an office space, it was great, to have, it was much easier to say like, okay, would you like us to come to your office was another option. It's like, would you like us to go to your office? Or but when we had it, it was great because we could have, we had a common office space that we could use for like boardrooms and conference calls and those kinds of things. So, there definitely are perks to having like that kind of physical location. But, you're also, when you're at home, it's like you're in your own germ pool. You're not getting everybody else's cold. You're not.
No, I mean, I've got a kid too, and so you're not getting anyone else in your office sick, but every kid at school is getting you sick, so.
Well, the worst was when nobody in my family had, when I was in the office, I got pink eye, and I'm like, nobody in my family had pink eye, and I'm like, I knew I must have picked it up from like an elevator button or a door handle or something. I was like, ah.
Stop slamming your face against the elevator buttons, Eric. That's the first step right there.
Don't use your nose to push the buttons. Yeah.
But I think with having like a PO box or something, I think there are, at least in Canada, I'm sure it's that way in the States too, there are ways to get a physical address that's basically just going to forward your mail.
Yeah.
That's something, is good. But ultimately, if you're going to be contracting with a client or a publisher or whoever, you're going to have whatever your corporate address is, which might ultimately be your house. So, oh well. So not much you can do there.
You get even more, spam mail. I mean, here in the States, you can have your corporate address, but I mean, it can quite frankly be a PO box down at the post office. It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical address. Now, that's not going to help you with the way Nintendo used to be, but they're not as bad about that anymore. Yeah. But I mean, I agree. It's to me, and I've been doing remote work for a decade now. It comes down to, making sure that, like you said, the people that you're working with, you trust, keeping yourself focused. And, from there on, it kind of goes, it falls into place. Yeah. All right. So we got a question from Discord. What is the story about my hat? It's from an aquarium.
Mr. Man. You said Mr. Man.
We went on vacation, and so it's supposed to look like a shark bit the front out of your hat.
He stuck his face too close to the blades of a lawnmower.
I tried to tell somebody that I was actually attacked by a shark, and I beat him off with a hat, and it bit the hat, but they didn't fall for that. So yeah, it's one of those. I paid for something that's supposed to look like it's torn up.
It kind of looks like it is the teeth of the shark, I thought.
It's the little ridges when
yes
would have been, but yeah, that's the same reason.
That was a little bitty shark.
Oh my god, that looks awesome. So, yeah.
A little bitty shark.
All right, so if you've got questions out there for Ericka or for us on anything around remote working versus, being in an office, toss it out there, and if you're listening on the podcast, well, you can't, but you can listen to the next show, or you can just send us a message, because we're on now we're on Twitch, Mixer, YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, all at the same time, because we're doing during the wide thing now. So it's just, there's so many different things to talk about when you're doing this, and obviously productivity is the biggest one. Mm-hmm. At my office, it's one of those that I don't care if you work 2 hours a day or if you work 8 or 9. I don't want you working past that.
Yeah.
As long as things are getting done, I don't care how much time you're spending on it, as long as and so that's where, luckily, we have these tools now, and you're on the production side, I'm not, so I know we have Trello, and what else are you using on the tool set guide from just aside from communication?
Yeah, we do. We personally work a lot with Google Docs for kind of design documentation sharing, those kinds of things. Stuff that's going to be living for a little while too. We do collaborate a lot, particularly Tony and I, on documentation and even sometimes when you want advice on, you're like, okay, I'm going to write this letter to so and so. Can you read it? Just throw it in a Google Doc. It seems like it's like toilet paper. We just throw them out. Yeah. But so I think that's a big one for us. We do use Dropbox for kind of permanent storage is what we use, but there's tons of other options out there. And then when we use a tasking system called Assembla, and we've got our SVN repos attached to that, so it kind of works. One of the nicest things, honestly, that one of the checks that we put in is when we have project work, when there is a check-in, we have a little bot that prints the check-in to the appropriate project channel. So if somebody's checking into project A, it'll say so and so checked in, and then it gives the check-in description. So it keeps everybody kind of on the same page. And when you're working in with a larger team too, just if it's probably not the best thing, but we tend not to lock files because sometimes it causes problems, particularly if you have a big team and somebody's locked something and then forgot to unlock it, then they need the right admin person to unlock it for them, those kinds of things. So we'll often say hey, I'm done within the day. We'll say hey, I'm just checking this in, then I'm going to be working on this next. So people know it's people, we always say are you in Maine? I'm going into Maine, going in, into the into our chats, making sure that we're not touching things that are going to screw other people over with what they're working on. So those are kind of the main ones that we use. And then I said Slack, or just the voice chats are great for quick check-ins and stand-up reports and those kinds of things.
See, that was great timing. I don't know if you're watching the chat feed, but Marcus over on YouTube said, "What are you all using for chat?"
Yeah.
So let me ask this, and then I'll get to Nightwolf's question as well. We used to use Slack. We don't use it anymore. We use Discord.
Yeah.
What are the pros and cons? Which one do you use? Do you use both? How do y'all handle that on that side?
So because our company does, we do games, but we also do more what would be IDM, interactive digital media, which doesn't necessarily fall into the game space. Some of our clients are not as Discord savvy, or they don't really know what it is. So that's probably one of the, and that's why we still use Skype sometimes too, is because like, you know, if we're working with like an academic partner or, you know, some other partner, we will tend to use what they are most comfortable with. So we give them a variety of options. Slack, I still like Slack, but there are definitely little perks to Discord, which honestly, this is the only thing I'm just going to say this out loud. The only reason that I don't like Discord is because I don't like the fact that the difference between the voice channel and a chat channel is this tiny little icon, and it's the same color and it's gray, and I always just look for the word, and I often click on a voice chat and go, oh my god, and hang up real quick.
Well, what you got to do is you got to separate your voice chats when they're text chats completely into different groups.
Well, they do, they sort, but if I'm just popping on, I just hate it. Because I'm old, I don't know. I'm still.
You're not as old as Tony. That's the
So I will never be as old as Tony. Well, assuming. But yeah, I think with Slack, I like I do like the admin tools there in a way, just because they're a little bit they're just kind of more dumbed down. I think Discord has got you know, because you can have community and it's got basically too many options, more options than I need if I'm just running something for like a small project, you know, that isn't going to be community based. So but yeah, I think they're both great. And the one feature we like about Discord is that you can individually turn people down if their mic's too loud.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
We've got I'm not naming any names, but we've got one loud talker.
That would be me if I was in there. So, Nightwolf asks, how can you get a remote company to trust you if you're just getting into the workforce, as in no prior work experience and you're not an intern or a student nearby?
All right, sorry. Maybe I can. I've got it over here. What was the question again? How do you get a remote company to trust you? Yeah, you know what? It would be a matter of, like, if you're talking about getting hired, is that the question? By a remote company?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would say if it is at all possible, face-to-face meetings, which is not the easiest thing to do, but if there is, like, if they're running, like, if they're going to be the company that you like is at GDC or PAX or whatever, going up to whoever's there, getting their card and, like, you know, making a face-to-face connection. There's just zero that beats that. Beyond that, if the company does have a Discord, get on there and start chatting with them. Get to know people, you know, like there are, like, I am always, like, surprised, like, you know, some, like, other people that I consider friends that I've never met. I have no idea, like, who they are, what they look like, if you know, and but they're just, like, super friendly people. And then I actually ironically just there was a student that I had referred to me from somebody else who had been one of their professors, but I had never met them. I had one quick phone call with them, hired them to do some community development for us, and they worked out great. Totally was like, you're the best. I was talking to them every day. They did a great job. And I just ironically met them at a meetup like last month, and they're like, I'm so-and-so. And I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, I have no idea who you are, because I've never seen your face. I felt like I knew them so well, but I had never met them. So I think it's still that making that human connection, if you can, if it's at all possible to make a human connection with somebody that's on that dev team, is super important, because we tend to, like, it's just a natural tendency for being a human being to prefer a known entity over an unknown, right? And if I've talked to you on Discord at least once or twice, or versus somebody I've never talked to before, I'll just naturally feel a little bit maybe a little bit more trust, and you're showing that you've got interest in my company versus a blind application. But I think another thing to consider is that remote companies are also used to hiring remotely. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. You're going to, if you don't have a personal in, you're going to be just as likely as anybody else to make a good impression.
So what is the Phantom Compass Discord, Ericka?
Oh, that's a good question. It is, I believe it's just Phantom Compass. It is.
It's weird sometimes when you...
What do you know your own Discord? Yeah, it's just called Phantom Compass.
It's weird sometimes when you meet somebody in person that you've talked to online for like a year or whatever, and you're like, oh, wow, this... Because even if you don't, you realize that you unconsciously like have an image of this person in your head. Even if you're not aware that you're doing it, and then you see them and you're like, I totally didn't expect this person like this or whatever. Oh.
Yeah, they're 7 feet tall and or whatever. Yeah. No, it is. It's neat, and that's why I kind of I like. I'm still freaked out. I've got young kids. I don't want them making friends online with strangers. But it is kind of it's a cool thing that you can connect and find people anywhere.
Discord is, I hadn't even thought about that, but Discord is really opened up that option for a lot of people, because most developers and publishers both now have a Discord server. Even for some of the indie teams, if it's only 15 people on there, you at least have one. And so
it's very intimate, I find, Discord, compared to Twitter or Facebook or anything. Even though you do have a direct connection to the company there, Discord is real. Seems more legit and real, I guess. I don't know. There seems to be lots of real conversations.
You have to actually show an interest and go. Twitter and Facebook, it's very passive, wide open. It's like anywhere. But if you want to, I've used Discord to reach out to folks that I didn't even know in the industry to come on the show. I see they're doing something interesting in the news and find their Discord server and send them a note. And so it's a lot easier to do that sometimes than if you're on Twitter and you have to follow them, then you hope they follow you back so you can send them a direct message. I'd rather go, okay, I'm on Discord. Hey, this is who I am. This is what we do, type thing.
Yeah.
But it does. It opens up a lot of possibilities. And we had Justin French on the show a couple of months ago, and his whole thing about getting, marketing for your game going was push everything to the Discord server, and then use that as your community hub. So there's no excuse for you not having a Discord server if you're an indie dev at this point.
I think it's so weird. A lot of the time, people on Twitter, their whole premise is to meet people and to network and and all of this, and they invite people, but then their DMs are closed. Why would you close your DMs? Or you don't have an email to contact you or something.
Yeah.
People are weird.
Oh, you know what? Okay, before I forget, one thing that I didn't realize too, but just getting back to distributed offices, something that I didn't realize, on the financial side, which is when you have expensive equipment, as you were saying when you were talking about dev kits, I'm like, yes, you do need the dev kit and behind the closed door. And guess what? If you're distributed, you need a dev kit in every person's office, their home office, that is going to be accessing it, right? So,
oh damn,
yeah, think about that. So depending on how big your dev team is, maybe if you have a tester that would, the dev guys, just dev guys are going to be testing or working on the dev kit during the day, and then you're going to bring in an evening tester to work on the same machine or whatever it is. You're going to share equipment, VR equipment, same thing. You're going to have this big setup. Well, every person who's developing and testing is going to have that same setup. So it is, you might be saving on rent, but you're going to be spending more on equipment, and you're also going to be spending more on shipping that equipment. So, I've, half a dozen times had to like, okay, so pack up that special laptop now because we need it over here because we're going to demo it. So we're like, we're going to, GDC or PAX or something like that. We need this, like we need our beast machine back from from somebody or dev equipment. So it's something else to consider that I kind of always forget about myself now that we've got the equipment. But as soon as we bring in a new member, it's like, oh yeah, that's expensive.
All right, so I've got a question then, and this has absolutely nothing to do with any new client that I may or may not have.
Okay.
How do you maintain the security of your assets when you're sending, say, art assets and you've got one person working on, the animation on one side and somebody doing backgrounds on another? How do you keep all of that managed and secure? Because it's like you said, you can't say, send me that special, laptop back, because it's completely and utterly impractical to do that.
Yeah.
What are there tools that you use? Is there something that you wished existed that doesn't exist? How do you handle that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, mostly we use like online services that are, already, like, we're not rolling our own or anything. I know some companies have their own servers, but we just do just general good practices like two-factor authentication on all of your logins, those kinds of things. Like, but yeah, like for art files in particular, like I guess if you're thinking of a specific thing, if you're like looking for like a back and forth, generally that would get we would be checking that into like a secured repo, or having like if it's something that is, we do use Dropbox as a final resting place for originals, but that's only after like working files are done with. I don't know if that answered your question very well.
No, it does, because and I'll explain to you later offline why I'm asking. I can't talk about it publicly right now, but I had a very real reason to ask that. We only got a few minutes left because Indy's got like a hard date. He booked a meeting like in 8 minutes. If you've got questions, let us know. Type it in chat in whatever form you're watching us right now, because we're using Restream and we all see it anyway. But just in general, a couple of quick notes. You can always find out more about the show or the podcast if you go to indiegame.business. There's links to all of that sort of stuff. There's a link in there or in our Mixer chat about the list of 500 publishers that we put out there. So you can click that link, put in your email, and it fires that out to you. What else am I missing, Andy? We have a lot of stuff going on. So yes, one thing. Now that we're on Mixer, I really want to put together a indie dev team. So if you are an indie developer and you stream, the games that you're creating, or even the creation of the games that you're creating, send me a note, reach out to us on one of these platforms and let me know, because I want to build a nice little community for our indie devs to help each other promote their stuff.
Oh, that's cool. And you need 5,000 Spark to start a team. And
I already did.
Okay, good.
We've got it started. There's a an indie game business team on Mixer now, with a logo that says basically your logo goes here. So I had the Sparks and I set it up. I keep forgetting to talk about it. So, but yeah, okay, all right. So let's go through some of these questions here.
All right, and I have like 1 minute. So
all right. So any special advice for someone setting up an officeless company, Ericka?
Special advice. I think the key is know, if you trust and know your team members, everything will be fine.
Oh, yeah.
That's the biggest fail point.
Absolutely the best ever. That's we all know and we trust everybody.
Yeah, if you trust it, like if everything else will fall in together. I think just be or
send
me a note.
Right?
Get good. Feel free to send me notes on. I'm on the Indie Game Business Discord too. If you have anybody has follow up questions, but yeah, I think that there are so few barriers right now to running a business this way. Like it's a great option, particularly for people who are starting a business.
Right. So our Discord is discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. Right, Jay?
Yeah. We haven't. We're an official Discord.
Yeah.
We're official and stuff. So,
official.
But yeah, I know Indy's got to run. So, as Ericka, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ericka. It's great meeting you.
If you're open to it, I want to have you back to talk about that other thing that we were talking about, the other lecture. I mean,
another day.
About. Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me.
And I think that's it for right now. I'm sure I'm missing something, but thank you, Ericka. I greatly appreciate you doing this.
No problem. It was great. Great talking to you guys.
Also, if you guys want to listen to this, where can we listen to it, Jay?
Anchor.fm/Indie Game Business.
Indie Game Business, right.
Pretty much find a platform and type Indie Game Business and you'll find us.
Right. Bye. Thank you, guys. Thanks Ericka.
Everybody.
See ya.